From claiming that nobody dreams of fighting in Bellator to saying that fighters only go to this promotion to earn easy money, here's what Paddy the Baddy thinks about other famous MMA promotions. I've got to start with how he said that 99 out of 100 fighters dream of being in the UFC. Paddy's never been someone who's afraid of speaking his mind. The Liverpool native was giving an interview where he said that even though he's on the sidelines, he still isn't missing any chance of making headlines. The former Cage Warriors champ said he almost walked away from MMA after a professional record of 4-1 because he wasn't getting paid enough. Paddy was only being paid £500 for a fight when he was 18, which is basically nothing for an MMA fighter. Plus, the UFC has always been in the news for underpaying their fighters, which is really frustrating. But still, Pimblett said, 99 out of 100 fighters dream of being a part of the UFC. He said that you won't hear any fighter saying they dream of becoming the Bellator MMA champion or a PFL champ. If there's a fighter who signs for Bellator or PFL, their only aim is to make millions of dollars by fighting against zero competition. Or in his words, they earn millions of dollars with easier fights. Whoa! I mean, yes, we all know these promotions pay you way more than UFC, but someone who's part of the UFC shouldn't have said something like this. Cause with this statement, not only is he taking shots at Bellator, he's indirectly taking shots at the UFC for underpaying their fighters. But he didn't exactly slam other promotions. Paddy might be sympathizing with the young kids who dream of being MMA fighters. He said that he understands why young fighters are joining PFL or Bellator. Even though they dream of being in the UFC eventually, they still have to look elsewhere to take home a hefty paycheck. But, ironically, most of the UFC fighters who joined other promotions for more money have found minimal success there. Anthony Pettis made the switch to PFL from UFC, and he suffered 2 broken hands in PFL playoffs 1. It's not all sunshine and rainbows in PFL, it seems. Maybe Paddy's wrong, but his bold statement hasn't gone unnoticed. Sean O'Malley reacted to Pimblett's statements, and surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, Sugar sided with Paddy. The number 2 ranked bantamweight fighter said it's true that not a lot of fighters dream of joining Bellator. O'Malley never dreamed of fighting for Bellator either. His only aim was to be in the UFC, but he said both these promotions are pretty great alternatives to the UFC. He's even happy about the fact that these two exist. Sugar said it's awesome that Bellator and PFL exist. Everyone has a different way of thinking. Some people only fight for money, and Sean understands them. He said he even has some buddies in Bellator who are making a hefty amount of money there. Sugar said there are some really great fighters on top of the division, but as you go deep down, you won't find a lot of competition there. And he's absolutely right. This is the main problem with these promotions. Even though they pay more, they don't make great fighters. Your skills only get tested in promotions like the UFC. That's why it's the greatest MMA promotion in the world. But fans haven't taken his statements very well. A lot of them turned against him, actually. Things weren't going nicely for Paddy already, and now after his statements against other promotions, they've started to criticize him even more. One guy even said that he should focus more on fighting than talking. Some said he wouldn't even win in any other promotions, and that his talent isn't a match for his talk. He is way less talented than he thinks he is. Oops, you shouldn't have said it, Paddy. It's never a good thing to have all the fans against you, and that's not it. Many fans have blamed him for fighting easy opponents in the UFC and making a career out of it. It seems like a lot of people think Paddy isn't a great and talented fighter. It's pretty clear that he shouldn't have said what he said. I think everyone's being too harsh on him, cause whatever he said is only the truth. We can't just not talk about it. Paddy just said what he feels, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Speaking of fans turning against him, this isn't the first time it's happened. Fans recalled one of Paddy's Paddy's old tweets in 2022 and started taking shots at him. The baddie was all set to take on Jared Gordon at UFC 282 before he was suddenly the center of controversy for a tweet he made in 2021. He said some pretty bad things about fellow fighter Ilia Topuria and shamed him for being a Georgian. Although he deleted that tweet, it still came back to haunt him a year later. Fans started bashing him for his comments about Topuria. They even said that it was the real face of Paddy Pimblett. This is who he really is. One even called him a hypocrite. What's even more disturbing is that after his bout against Levitt, he made one of the most inspiring speeches on mental health. A lot of fighters and fans praised him for it, but only in his next fight, all of them turned against him again, and their hate didn't end after his win against Gordon. It still continued, but for different reasons. Fans and fighters bashed him over his controversial decision win against Flash. Not a single person on earth, apart from the judge, thought that Paddy could win that bout. I don't know what was going through that judge's mind, but it was a clear win for Jared. Well, this didn't sit well at all with the fans and other fighters. Fans took to Twitter and said that Gordon was robbed of that win. Flash himself said he couldn't believe he lost. UFC fighter Bilal Muhammad even tweeted and said that the judge himself didn't know which rounds Paddy had won. He just guessed and awarded Pimblett with the win. Almost all the fans on Twitter were certain that the Englishman didn't even win one round in that fight. I've gotta say, maybe he's now used to this hate from the fans. This has been the story of his UFC career. In the UFC, all it takes is one bout for you to turn from a hero to a villain in the eyes of the fans. Speaking of the UFC, he even took shots at his own promotion once. The baddie said in 2022 that he has no interest in being an active fighter. Yeah, you heard it right. Paddy sees no point in being an overly active fighter. Why? Because he isn't making enough money inside the octagon. After signing a lucrative 7-figure deal with Barstool Sports as a brand ambassador, he isn't in any rush to step inside the octagon once again. The Englishman said he makes more money outside the octagon than he does inside of it. It even makes him laugh when fans say that he isn't active enough or that he doesn't fight more often. The Liverpool native said he has no intention of fighting 4 times a year because he isn't paid what he deserves by the UFC, and he didn't stop at this. The former Cage Warriors champ said he won't fight any top dudes like Islam Makhachev and Ferguson, not until he gets paid more money. Fans have also bashed him for avoiding all the top opponents in his career and taking the easy way out. They think that he'll never fight a top fighter in his career. He's even ready to fight for free, but only if all the other fighters are fighting for free as well. Paddy said he loves fighting, and if the whole world's fighting for free, then he's ready to sacrifice his pay as well. Can't see that happening. That's all from me on Paddy Pimblett Slams Bellator.